Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of Entrepreneur on Fire. And when I'm not interviewing inspiring entrepreneurs, I'm listening to Stephanie O'Brien on the Moved by Purpose podcast.
This is something that if you wanted to do, you could do by yourself. And it's not something, I don't have any secret sauce per se that anybody else doesn't have access to. You just have to do the grunt work of figuring it out. So all the information you need is out there.
Are you longing to know what your purpose is? Are you on the wrong career path? Do you feel like there must be more to life? Don't worry, there's hope. It's time to be moved by purpose. Now your host, Stephanie O'Brien.
Hey, it is the Moved by Purpose podcast, and it is Stephanie O'Brien. And today's guest is Tom Morkes. And I'm excited because he is a person that is rocking it in the internet marketing space and also happens to live in Michigan too. So I was thrilled to connect with him. And Tom has a variety of things going on, but his basic gist of what he does is that he helps people start, finish, and ship creative projects. Welcome to the show, Tom. I am very excited to have you on the show today.
Stephanie, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So I would love to get a better picture of your working career background. What did you start off doing? What led you to starting your business? And I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I am actually prior service military, so I went to West Point, graduated 2008, and spent 5 years active duty. One of those years was in Iraq. Came back after Iraq and had a couple more years still in the Army. And so I was like, okay, what am I going to do after this? Because I don't intend to make this a career. So I started kind of working on things on the side. Eventually, I started a couple side projects in terms of like actually real estate related stuff. Started building some websites around that. Then realized, I don't think I care that much about that. I still invest in real estate, but I wasn't really passionate about teaching or educating it or building platforms around it. So I decided to launch this TomMorkes.com, kind of a hub or a base for all the other projects I was working on. Started writing on that, started publishing my own books, made some money through that, surprisingly using pay-what-you-want pricing of all things, which led me into more projects like that, then into publishing other people's stuff. And so I founded Insurgent Publishing to do that. And so we have, about over a half dozen authors now that we publish, as well as a magazine called Bootstrapped. And since then I also collaborated on and co-launched a couple separate projects, including The Flight Formula, which is a heart-centered business incubator program, and High Speed Low Drag, which is a platform for veterans, specifically geared toward transitioning veterans, but also good for active duty and guys that have been out for a while. So yeah, it's kind of just the 30 or minute and a half pitch on that. It's a little background on myself.
So it sounds like you've had quite a few ventures. And did you ever have a traditional job?
Traditional, I guess, in the Army was probably the most traditional thing. And then, because straight from that, I just went right into doing my own thing, which, again, yeah, it's kind of tough to encapsulate because it's been a few different things. I've done some consulting here and there. Obviously, I did the publishing, the Insurgent Publishing stuff. Actually, recently got into some book consulting on the side outside of Insurgent Publishing. So while we publish books, and that's kind of traditional in the context of publishing, I've also done some kind of one-on-one consulting stuff with independent authors who kind of still want to own the rights to their books and things like that. So I've kind of been all over the place in terms of like smaller little side projects that have kind of evolved into bigger things as well. So kind of how I mentioned, like I started writing, then I published my own stuff, and then that kind of led to publishing other people's stuff. And right now I'm actually building a platform for self-publishers because I realized I can only manage so many authors. I don't want to hire more people. I want to keep it a very small company that I manage, basically kind of my hobby, but that is still like a very, I guess as far as Insurgent Publishing is concerned, I really want it to be like a mom and pop shop, something that I can get my hands dirty in terms of like the actual books that we publish. But I realize that leaves a lot on the table in terms of like all the people that I potentially help or the people that are out there searching for something like that. So I'm in the process of building out kind of what I'm going to describe as literally the most comprehensive self-publishing education resource and platform for self-publishers. So we'll be launching in January.
Oh, that sounds really exciting and amazing. I mean, I myself am in the process of writing a book. I just have to get the first draft down, and I know that that's a whole process in and of itself, but I probably will go the self-publishing route versus traditional publishing, because quite frankly, I don't even know what's involved in traditional publishing.
Yep.
So, and I just think you have more control, and it's a lot, well, I don't want to say simpler, but you just have more control when you do the self-publishing route.
Yeah, and that's a big consideration, and I'd be happy to dive more into that if you're interested.
Sure.
Well, I guess, so, let's say that in that context, it's something that even the people that I work with, I always say, this is something that if you wanted to do, you could do by yourself, and it's not something, I don't have any secret sauce per se that anybody else doesn't have access to. You just have to do the grunt work of figuring it out. So all the information you need is out there, but nobody's kind of compiled it. Nobody's made it easy to access or simple. When it comes to printing, that's a whole different language altogether. If you get in the context of actually like doing kind of specialized printing, whether for magazines or things like that. And you just realize, so there's information out there. It's really tough to get. And the big pitch for me when I talk to authors and get them on board that I work with, it's a matter of, do I enjoy their content? Is it something I would want to be involved in their projects because I love the material? And then my pitch for that, or the way I propose, is, hey, you focus on, obviously, the art piece of it can help improve that art. I can be a force multiplier for that. But a big thing, too, what I do is I do a big piece of the marketing and sales and stuff like that. So we do a lot of creative things when it comes to selling books that literally most traditional publishers don't do. They work entirely on a size strategy, like that they're so big they can kind of push your book out ideally to lots of different sources, and that's how you'll get sales. But the reality is that often doesn't even work. So it definitely brings stuff to the table, but I think it's awesome. Anytime somebody does want to self-publish, I think it is something they should do. I think you should be in control of your art and what you're creating. So yeah, hopefully this platform that I'm building will help facilitate that for independent and self-publishers.
Yeah, and so you serve both. You do both the traditional and
Correct.
both the self-published. I mean, I'm kind of giving like a nice pro and con list. I know we touched a very basic overview of it. What are the pros and cons of traditional publishing? Some of the things that frustrations someone might encounter doing the traditional route, some of the things that are taken off their plate doing the traditional, and then if you want to break down the same with the self-publishing.
Yeah.
If someone's considering writing a book, what they should do.
Well, the reality is if you're just writing a book, this is the hard truth, is if you're writing a book and nobody knows who you are, you're going to have to self-publish. Because the reality is traditional publishers, when we're talking like the big five, they really only pick up new authors that have established brands or established platforms. So if you're just starting out and you're writing a book right now, and no matter what process it is, and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to send out this manuscript to a publishers when I'm finished. Okay, cool. I'm not saying don't do that. Go for it. Maybe you will land something, but the chances are very, very low, probability-wise. You have to have generally sales or a platform to back up why a publisher should pick you up. The second thing isn't necessarily a pro or con, it's kind of, facts. But then
the truth.
Yeah, yes, the truth. So then on the pros of going with a traditional publisher, especially the big five, is kind of what I said before. They have large market share. They can get your books into Barnes & Noble and things like that. Hypothetically, that should help sell more books. But here's also the negative of it that I've heard on more than one occasion of people who have been self-published, who've been self-publishers, like publish their own stuff, but also been published. The contrast. And what they say is, you know what? There's like no publishers out there that actually market your book. You're still responsible for marketing your own book and selling your own book. So don't think because you're an author that you can get away with getting picked up by a big publisher and then sit back and you're good to go. It's still entirely your responsibility to market and sell that thing. Big publishing houses do not do that. On the plus side, though, you do generally get an advance with a big publisher. Self-publishing, obviously, it's all your skin in the game. But on the positive side of that, it's 100% upside is yours. So that's a brief kind of overview. I mean, you could probably get into more stuff, but I think that's kind of and then also, I guess, creative control. With a publisher, the idea is they're going to make it so that it's better, it's more accessible to a broader audience, and they're going to bring that market experience to the table and help you kind of form a book so that it will sell to whatever the market is. But at the same time, you give up a lot of control in how you create whatever you're creating. Whereas as a self-publisher, I can create whatever I want, however I want. So it depends what perspective you're coming at this from or what angle you're coming at this from, like what your goals are, but that's definitely a consideration for some people.
And as far as the traditional route publishers, are traditional publishers funding the work involved as far as coming up with the cover, the editing, the print, or is that, did I misunderstand?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
So a traditional publisher will help with that. They should at least. They should be helping with editing. You should have an actual editor that works on your book with you. They'll end up doing the cover design. They'll do all that stuff. So yeah, it really allows the author to focus on the writing. And then also ultimately the marketing and sales. But
right. Don't forget the sales and marketing.
Exactly.
Okay. As far as advances, now I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding of what that money is. It's an advance. It's just that you have to come up, like you technically have to raise the funds and pay them back, right? And then you don't get any royalties or anything until you have paid back the advance in book sales.
That's correct.
Okay. And I think people don't realize that.
Yeah, no, I know. And, of course, everything's kind of contract dependent. So when I speak here, it's in generalities to kind of what I've experienced and what I see in the different authors I've spoken to. So kind of getting a broader look. But, of course, everything can be contract specific. Maybe you might be able to propose or get a contract that is not that way with a big publisher. I don't know. I just know what the general kind of trends are. Okay.
And then how about self-publishing? I mean, you mentioned the more control over self-publishing, but you also have to fund now. You have to come up with the cover design. You have to, again, I mean, as far as marketing and sales, you're doing that whether you self-publish or do the traditional publishing. So you can count on that regardless.
Yeah. It's funny because if you do the math too, a traditional publisher will probably take about I don't know, again, big generalities here. It's all contract dependent, but upwards of 90% of every book sale, if not more in some cases, if it's like trade paperback. So if it's traded paperback, you might make, I don't know, 7% or something like that on a book sale. So if your book is selling for $10 and you're only going to make 7% on that, what is that? It's like 70 cents. So I think I did the math right there.
I'm not good at math. So
we're going to go with that. We're just going to hope that that's right. So if you realize now, then now we're going to do a little bit more math. Think about how many book sales you then have to sell to make, I don't know, 10 grand off of one book. And you realize that you'd have to sell, over 1,000, right? But if you were just a self-publisher, you'd probably, if you were going traditional, you'd probably have to sell probably about 10,000 books to make that back. But if you're just going self-publisher route, you might only need to sell about 1,000 books to make that same amount. Or if you're selling directly to your audience, not using something like Amazon, you can sell for even less and make way more. So if you use a platform like Gumroad.com or something like that, that allows you to facilitate the sale directly to your audience, which is something I encourage with my authors and we do a lot, you'll make it's 95% of the royalty versus Amazon takes 30 to 70%. So even Amazon isn't that great relative to these other things. But it's a question of strategy and your technique and goals, depending on, do I use Amazon? Do I go self-publishing? Do I sell directly to my audience? Do I do a mix of both? Do I make anything exclusive? What are these routes? So it just kind of depends on goals and intention. Amazon is a great platform if you're looking for exposure to new people that you don't have an audience already. But I'm a big proponent. If you have an audience, sell directly to them. At least that's what I propose. I mean, it all depends on what your goals are, though.
And I think a lot of it, too, speaking of audience, I know people that are working really hard and hustling to try to build an audience. A lot of it comes down to you need one. And so even when I hear of Kickstarter, I think it's the ones that do the best are usually the ones that already have big audiences. And, 90% of those funders are from their own audience in the first place. And the same with Amazon sales. You probably would know this more than I do, but I don't know how much people that make the bestseller list on Amazon did that without an audience. I don't know how rare that is.
I'd say it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Pretty rare, but not impossible. Because here's the thing. There's ways you can leverage other people's audiences even if you don't have your own. You have to be a bit more strategic. But again, it's not like, I'm just going to pull the trigger on this and people will find me. That is not at all how it works. So again, not to burst anybody's bubble, but if you're thinking, I'm going to put this book out there, this one book that I've written, it's, taking me 10 years to write. I'm going to put it out there on Amazon. I'm going to be an Amazon bestseller. Probably not. It doesn't really matter if it's the best book in the world. So that's just the nature of the beast. It's the era we live in. The barrier to entry is very low now. That's a good thing. It also has its own consequences. So as far as to become a bestseller, it actually depends a lot on, it's a funny thing about bestseller, the word itself is kind of becoming less and less meaningful because basically everybody's a bestseller now. I mean, I think even I might be, technically speaking, but
probably.
Yeah. Well, but recently, I did help launch Dan Norris's book, the founder of WP Curve, and he wrote a book, a really good book called The 7-Day Startup. And so it's an awesome book, but he also has a great platform, and so we were able to leverage his platform and launch it. Got it up to number 30 in the whole Amazon bookstore, which is, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of books. And that was in the free category because we did a promotion. And then when we went back to paid, he's still in the top 1,000 of Amazon. But more importantly isn't that. What's important is in his categories. He's in the top 5 in several categories, and he's number 1 or number 2 in a couple key categories like startup, I believe, and small business. And so the important thing here is to recognize that he is a bestseller, but more importantly is I think that word is less meaningful than the fact that well, again, unless you're using it as kind of a badge of honor, and then that's good, but credibility, sure, it's good for that as well. But the big thing from a revenue standpoint, or even more important maybe from a platform standpoint, is by being 1, 2, or 3 in key categories, in kind of subcategories, more people are going to find you. It's kind of that whole long tail concept. I don't know if you've ever heard of long tail, but it's the whole long tail concept that you're better off pursuing than trying to be the person who published, Obama's next book or something like that. Like, he's going to be number 1 or something like that, or he's going to be in the top of the bookstore, but you don't have to be there. You can actually just be number 1 in your category, which is the long tail category, and it's actually going to be better for you in terms of revenue and exposure to the audience that you actually care about and you're serving. So just food for thought.
Nice. So do you talk about all of this in your self-publishing? Well, is it a course or is it just your new website services?
Good question. So it's going to be called Publisher's Empire, and domain is bought. Yeah, I know.
That was available?
I know, right? Can you believe it?
Wow, okay.
So publishersempire.com. So if you go to that should be redirecting. I'm not going to do an official launch until January. We already have, pre-beta users that are in there right now, authors that I'm working with, and they're kind of getting a lot of one-on-one time with me right now, which is kind of cool. It's not necessarily something I'm going to do a lot with once I launch it. Like, I'm going to have to scale back that portion. But it's going to be a comprehensive training platform to take you from the creation of your book, so writing, whether it's ideation, writing, editing, to the packaging process, so formatting, design for physical print, digital, paperback, hardcover, even in going into magazines as well, which I have experience in, and that will be sourcing because I think that's a great avenue for some people. And then to monetization, so how do you market, how do you sell? Obviously covering massive, big platforms like Amazon and so on and so forth. But more importantly, maybe how you do that through additional means, like how about sponsorship for your book? Or how about even potentially selling ads in a book? Not something, I know that sounds probably really terrible, but there's ways you can kind of get books sponsored that, a lot of people haven't thought of. Then, of course, there's also one of the big things I'm a proponent of is making a book less important in terms of a revenue generator as it is kind of an audience builder. So strategies to use a book as more of a calling card to build your own platform. So how do you develop a book that way that is going to drive people from reading that book to clicking through if they're reading on Kindle, to come to your website to sign up for your email list, or if they're reading a paperback, what's going to make them come to your website and sign up for your list or do something else, right? I'm a big proponent of that because just for 100 different reasons, but I guess I'll leave it at that. So we're going to cover it from start to finish to ship.
Okay, that's awesome. First of all, that's new to me. I did not even think of books being sponsored. I know speakers are sponsored. I know some podcasters are. I guess I just never thought you could do that with books. I don't even know if I've seen it. So that's cool that they go in that. I mean, I guess magazines in that aspect, I see advertisements all the time in magazines, but not in a book.
There's a few players that have done it. Seth Godin did it with his Domino project. So, I'm not inventing anything here. I'm just looking at what works. You know what I mean? So I just look at him. He did that very successfully. He had like GE or something like that sponsor one of his books for that platform. I think it was Do the Work by Stephen Pressfield. Great book. Oh. And so he's done that, which is, again, I was like, well, that's brilliant. I don't know why more people don't do that. Where it's still tasteful. Like, again, nothing about it was
over the top.
Over the top, exactly. Like, I'm not saying plaster your book full of ads or anything like that. That would be horrible, and I don't think that'll help anybody.
And Seth Godin wouldn't do that.
Exactly. He had like a really tasteful, it's like this book is sponsored by GE or something like that. And really, in the way he did that sponsorship, though, he basically, the way I understand it, I don't know the details completely, but from what the research have done, it was basically having GE basically pre-order or order 1,000 or 5,000 copies of the book. So, but I think about it, that's an unconventional way to launch something, to maybe get somebody to be a sponsor who pre-orders a bunch of your books for their business or for their company. And now you can put them down as a sponsor within the book, and I don't think that affects the value of that book at all, or it does not devalue it at all, in my opinion.
Yeah, I have actually heard of that, like people that have been like, oh, I'm not any bestseller, but I have sold over $100,000 in books. And I'm like, okay, how'd you do that? And I don't know if it was sponsored or something, but they'll get like companies to buy cases and cases of books to use in their leadership courses or whatever. So there are ways to get that. So that's cool. And I'm sure you dive into all of that in your course. Okay, awesome. Well, I'm really fascinated by this myself because, like I said, I'm in the process of writing my own book and know I will have to look at how do you launch it? How do you make sure you have everything in your book to make it the most worth your time and effort? So I am looking forward to that being available in January.
Definitely. Yeah, it's like one of those things that's scary too. It's like you put so much time and effort to a book. The last thing you want to do is launch it to nobody, So it's one of those things. It's worth putting the right amount of, as much attention as you put into the creation of the book to make it great. I would say an equivalent amount of time, or at least a good portion of the same amount of time, has to be put toward learning how to appropriately package it and just market, distribute, and sell it.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that has to be paid attention to. You can't just kind of write and just poof it out.
Exactly.
And then just like, okay, here, everyone come. But yes, I definitely, I had planned on doing the strategy of not necessarily revenue maker, not all that, but more of establishing credibility. I notice for some reason when you write a book, people just look at you instantly as a expert, usually, and it kind of opened doors, and it's the calling card of sending people back to you. So that was kind of the goal and intent of mine. So again, I look forward to learning what to make sure to include in my book, print versus ebook. I'm sure, will you cover that too?
Yep. And not only how to format and package for each of those, but strategically, why do which one? And, when is it beneficial to just do an ebook? When is it beneficial to potentially maybe just do a physical print? I actually can't say that there's really ever a case where that is, but there actually are in very niche circumstances. And then between the two, what are the different, strategically speaking, what are the reasons and ways to go about doing that?
Perfect. All right. So tell us how we can connect with you. I know you have a podcast, and like you mentioned, quite a few things going on.
Yeah.
So what is the best way? We talked most about your new venture, which will come in January, but how can people, I guess, be informed of when that is officially launched and stay in touch with you?
For sure. So best way is just go to tommorkes.com, and that's TOMMORKES.com. And from there, I share all the different projects I'm working on, and people can get a hold of me and get involved in Publisher's Empire, possibly even before I launch. I might actually accept a few additional people into the program before we get closer to launch, just to square away any kinks. And then, if you're interested in that and want early access, hit me up.
Awesome. I'll jump all over that opportunity.
Perfect, Stephanie. I'll shoot you an email after this.
Sure, perfect.
Deal.
Yeah, I could use all the help I can get.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And I'm honestly thrilled that you are a fellow Michiganian as well. So,
and
West
you side.
I went to school in Western Kalamazoo.
Yep, I'm familiar. I have some friends from there. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, the west side of the state is so beautiful. But anyway, before we start talking all about Michigan, we'll wrap it up. So thank you again so much, and make sure I will include all of these links to connect with you in the show notes. And just have a wonderful, beautiful fall day.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thanks so much for having me. How do you market? How do you sell? Obviously covering massive, big platforms like Amazon and so on and so forth. But more importantly, maybe how you do that through additional means, like how about sponsorship for your book? Or how about even potentially selling ads in a book? Not something, I know that sounds probably really terrible, but there's ways you can kind of get books sponsored.
So there you have it. That was Tom Morkes. And I hope that if you have been wanting to write a book, or have always wanted to write a book, or you are in the process of writing a book, make sure you connect with Tom Morkes over at his website, which is listed in the show notes, or at tommorkes.com. That is TOMMORKES.com. And also, if you liked this episode, make sure you come on over to movedbypurpose.net. Stay connected. Make sure you subscribe to stay up to date and get exclusive offers and content that is limited to my list only. And if you have not already done so yet as well, make sure you subscribe, rate, and write a review in iTunes. I love to know that people are listening. I love when people check in and tell me, hey, I love your show. This is who I am, because I don't always know who you are. And I am very thrilled and excited to be launching 2 programs, and I will tell you briefly about them. The Passion Project is a program that is for the person who is very clear that they want to start their own business, but they have multiple passions, or maybe don't even really know what passion they have to pursue and to make profitable. They don't know where to begin. They don't even really know what they want to focus on. And this Passion Project talks about all of that. You will get clarity on what to do. And after about the first meeting, you will have your first step to go and get you out there starting to make money doing what you love. Second program is called the Purpose Pursuit. Oh, by the way, Passion Project, the first one has already started, so make sure you get on it. I do have the doors open for a limited time for people that missed it, because I know I was late getting some of my podcast episodes going, so I am allowing you to get on it. But this is only open for a couple more weeks, so you have a limited time to get in. If you wait 2 more weeks, the price will go up. Currently it's at $100 a month. That is good for 2 more weeks, and then it will go up to $250 a month and will last for 6 months. Anyway, the information is all over at movedbypurpose.net. Just look for Passion Project and you will find all that you need over there. Okay, Purpose Pursuit. This program is for people that don't necessarily know if entrepreneurship or owning their own business is really for them. They're still not clear yet on what all of that means for them. It kind of sounds enticing yet a little bit overwhelming, but traditional work is not something that they're against. They actually kind of like the stability and all of that. They just really want meaningful work. So if you fall into this category, you know there's so much more for you. You know you're in a position where you're not utilizing all your skills and talents. You feel limited. You don't feel as valued. You don't feel maybe paid as much as you would like to be. Maybe it's not even the pay at all. Maybe it's just that you want to believe in what you do, line up with a mission and a vision, and go and serve and give your heart to that overall vision, because you know that once you're passionate about what you do, you give it your all, but you don't know what that is yet. You're not quite clear on what really is your sweet spot or what really revs your engine or lights your fire. So Purpose Pursuit is all about focusing on gaining clarity on your purpose and your calling and how to properly align that revelation that you will get from this program into meaningful work. So if you want to rock it and work you love, either by Passion Project or Purpose Pursuit, I want to hear you from you. I want to see you over at movedbypurpose.net. Shoot me an email, put Passion Project in the subject line or Purpose Pursuit in the subject line, and let me know if you have any questions, or say yes, sign me up. Same with Purpose Pursuit. Current cost is for that $150 a month, and then we're lasting for 3 months. Seating is now limited to only 5 people at this point. There are 5 spots left, so you want to get on it at the time of this recording. So yeah, you want to act fast. And also the price will go up to $300 a month. So you want to get on the $150 price point. I would, if I were you, because I love saving money and you get as much value. And those that take action quickly and act early get rewarded. So anyway, I'll talk to you all next week.